Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining. This is Pankaj Gupta from EthAum Venture Partners. We are a deep tech accelerator based in Singapore. We have 56 startups in a portfolio. All of these are AI, ML, blockchain, IoT, robotics, AR/VR kind of startups from different parts of the world, stages, and sectors. GoBuddy is one of the portfolio startups that we have from Cyberport, Hong Kong. And we have Isaac with us, who is the CEO and founder of GoBuddy. And today we are having a discussion on how the residential and commercial properties are engaging their tenants, are managing their tenants, and making sure that their tenants have a really good experience with those residential and commercial properties. Isaac is doing a lot of interesting work through GoBuddy in that space, and that's why we thought that why don't we bring some experts from the residential and commercial property space, hear their ideas, inputs, insights on what are the new innovations that are happening in this space, what kind of challenges residential or commercial property management teams are facing, and so on and so forth. And that's why we have this panel. This panel is recorded for the future reference so that other people and other PropTech enthusiasts could watch the video and hopefully learn something from this panel discussion. Now I will hand it over to Isaac for his introduction, GoBuddy's introduction, and then obviously we will dive into panelist introduction and then Q&A. Okay, Isaac.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Pankaj, for introducing about this seminar. It's really awesome that you have all the people here to join, and it's our honor to also invite different panels to join in here today, and also have Pankaj as one of the organizers. All right, to share about what he is his background as well. So just a little quick background about GoBuddy. Actually, GoBuddy is a software company. We are a SaaS company. We call it a software as a service company, that we are building a new generation of e-business solutions to help to empower and synergize businesses in Asia. So we mainly started from online business, and then later on we realized it seems to be there's another huge space that we can tap into, the residential properties and also the co-working spaces. We realized that they not only need just in terms of their own management, they also need to engage their tenants and engage their people, and with some of the the e-commerce things and also facilities booking, so and so forth. And that's why we start to moving into this space to explore this area. And we are currently incubated by we graduated from Cyberport incubation, and yeah, successfully. And we currently are based in Hong Kong, and we have business in Southeast Asia, in particular Malaysia, Singapore. And yeah, we basically help different kind of businesses to grow from a single website to marketplace and at reduce switching costs. All right. So yeah, I think today we mainly have two panels. One is Terence, and then Pankaj. I just confirm, is it another panelist from the site? Is he joining or?
Yeah, so he has not responded yet.
Okay.
Let's see. Hopefully he responds and then he comes on the discussion. But yeah, okay. I mean, it could be probably a fire chat for Terence then, right? If
okay.
He's the only...
And right? Maybe we invite you to chat as well, because I believe you do have some experience, particularly in venturing. So just also a very quick introductions, other than us, then I want to also thanks for Pankaj, to let Terence know as well. So Pankaj is actually the managing director of EthAum, VCs as well himself. So that's why he supports us in this portfolio. So next I want to invite maybe a Terence to briefly share about your background and your profile. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks guys, Isaac and Pankaj for inviting me to this panel discussion. So I'm based in Hong Kong, born in Hong Kong and raised in Australia, came back to Hong Kong about 7-8 years ago, founded Rayon International Limited. Predominantly it was a property agency that specializes in selling overseas projects in Hong Kong. Our key markets are Australia, UK and Canada. And then through time, we've gone to a lot of different operations, including property management, deployment, construction and implementation of embedded networks in high rises as well as broadacre estate. We dabbled in a bit of a PropTech ourselves in helping agent and client to have a better engagement, hence improving closing rate for the sales agent. So yeah, we've seen the ups and downs of the property cycle, and quite frankly, it's been a fairly fun journey. And over time, obviously, with the adaptation of digital marketing, we've seen a lot of changes in the way that we operate our business. So yeah, I've been in property all my life. From pre GFC to now, all the markets booming. I can certainly see there's a lot of changes ahead, and technology is the forefront, and now it's all about building an ecosystem. How you could better assist tenants or landlords or every stakeholder in the ecosystem to communicate better, and I think that's the key to the future.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much, Terence, for sharing. Let's move on with the kind of the panel Q&A, I think, at this moment. All right. So Pankaj, I may ask you some questions later on as well, because I think Pankaj has a very good experience in Singapore and also in India. So like we can also ask for some of the experience there as well. So let's start from the first questions. I think it's very interesting that nowadays we know like there's a global change, particularly like post-COVID, in terms of tenants engagement. So I want to ask for Terence first. So how do you see the adoption of real estate technology in Asia Pacific compared to globally?
I guess living in Hong Kong, adopting technology in Hong Kong, especially in the property sector, I would say it's a little bit behind compared to other parts of the world. The other operation that I have obviously is Australia. It feels as though the CRM system is a lot more advanced in terms for the tenant engagement. A lot of leads can be captured through websites like realestate.com, domain, etc., etc. Whereas I think the behavior is a little bit different because in Hong Kong, the tenant is dealing with landlords directly, and there's only very few landlords in Hong Kong. We all know, most 70% of the properties are held by a few landlords, right? So there's no one really saying, I'm going to create a platform, an open market space, and showcase all the properties for lease. I mean, there are some, 28 House, what's it called, REA in Hong Kong, and then there's a Spacious, right? But then are they very successful? I'm not sure. And also, with the market dominance of Midland, Centerline, Brickcorp, Hong Kong properties, I think it's a little bit old school in Hong Kong in terms of the way landlord and tenant engages, whereas in Australia is a little bit different. There's always going to be a middleman. Hardly there's an instance where the landlord deals directly with the tenant. There's always a property manager involved. So when that's involved, there's a lot more efficiencies in using technology to manage all these inquiries and try to speed up the process. Because what we're doing is, as a property manager, we're using technology to bridge the gap between the landlord and the tenant, and hopefully we can do our job, a lot more efficient and faster.
So I have some perspective on how the co-working spaces or how the other commercial spaces have been transforming because of COVID or because of other micro trends that are happening. So, for example, I remember when I used to book co-working spaces in China or in Thailand or in Taiwan back in 2018, 2019 timeframe. It was all completely manual. You call people, you try to understand what is the availability, what kind of facilities are available and things of that nature, and everything was completely manual, right? Even in India, right, it is exactly the same. You have to call people, you have to understand whether there's an availability or not, and what kind of features and capabilities these spaces have for their tenants, right? But after COVID, all these co-working spaces have completely transformed themselves, right? And why it is happening? Because there are so many startups who are creating marketplaces, who are creating platform to connect all these co-working spaces together, so that you don't have to call somebody. You can just go on the platform, try to figure out the availability, and just book on your own without taking any help from a human being. And also, other than the automation of complete booking process, I'm also seeing that in the before COVID, there was a lot of resistance from these properties that, hey, why do we have to do that? But after COVID, these spaces are also becoming very very supportive towards the innovation, towards new technologies, towards adopting the solutions that startups are proposing, and things of that nature, right? And other than the automation of the booking platforms and booking process, the computer vision, image recognition are playing huge role in transforming these commercial properties significantly. So, for example, all these commercial co-working spaces or commercial, properties, they are trying to see, hey, how can I automate touchless check-in, check-out process, right? How can I figure out whether the person has mask on or doesn't have the mask, right? How can I figure out that this is the right person, authorized person to enter into the building and take that particular or occupy that particular space? And there are a bunch of startups that I'm seeing that are using computer vision technologies or image recognition technologies to make sure that all of that happening completely smoothly without human intervention, and using the technology. Similarly, there's a lot of improvements which is happening because of the IoT, right? Let's talk about the parking spaces, right? Companies or residential and commercial spaces are thinking very hard. How can we make that complete entry exit process of vehicles completely automated using IoT hardwares, or again using computer vision, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of innovation which is happening in residential and commercial PropTech space. Earlier, companies were not very supportive or not very receptive to these innovations, but now they have to be supportive, otherwise they can't survive. So I think it is, and also because the VC funding is pouring heavily in the space, and when you have so much money pouring into some space, you have startups that can offer all kind of discounts, offer all kind of incentives for the customers to change their behavior faster and more efficiently. And I think that VC money is also playing huge role, other than obviously the COVID and other microtrends that are the potential reasons. So that's my take.
That's very interesting. I'm just curious, like, do you see any, like for Pankaj, do you see any difference between, say, your background, say, in Singapore and also in, like, say, in India? Is there any kind of this kind of differences of this kind of adoption of real estate technology? Because just now you mentioned, yeah, there are a lot of this kind of technology happenings. But then, like, just curious, is there any different kind of differences around based on your observations?
So, even pre-COVID, for example, properties in Singapore were at V1, okay? But properties in India were probably at V0 or V-1, right? And now, all of a sudden, everybody's trying to jump to V2 or V3, right? So it's a big change for the properties in India, but it's a smaller change in the mindset for the properties in Singapore, but this change is happening. And again, I truly believe that VC investment is playing a huge role. I talked to multiple startups in India, and they are in the PropTech space. PropTech space is really hot. Not only the institutional VCs, but also the angel investors are pouring money like anything. And because of all that money, now you have capabilities to incentivize your customers and make the adoption faster and more efficient, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm seeing I'm seeing that I have seen those kind of differences in the past, and now I'm seeing the adoption which is happening really quickly.
Cool. Thanks a lot for this. It's a very interesting insights. Second question I want to ask is like, what do you guys see is the current, like to Pankaj first, then to Terence. So what do you see is the current like trend and challenges that are faced in tenant engagement? Because just now we talk a lot about, like we share a lot about real estate technology. So the next will be is something on very human side in terms of the tenant engagement by using the current practice. Like, yeah, I mean the current practice, what's the current trend and the challenges that are faced in terms of tenant engagement?
Terence, you want to take that first?
Sure, maybe Terence.
I mean, from a we don't have particular issues with our tenant engagement in Australia. It's a very old school way of engaging tenant. You know, you pick up the phone or you sort of meet them in person. So it's kind of, there's always going to be a human touch to it, right? We haven't been able to automate it just because of, you know, this is the way that the industry has been, you know, working for so many years. But what's interesting is that because of the pandemic, a lot of things have changed, especially in the Australian market, where I think in Asia, the landlord always has the upper hand. Whereas in Australia, it's the other way around, right? You can, you know, it's very hard. First and foremost, it's very hard to evict a tenant going through the proper procedure. You have to go through court hearing. You have to send them registered mail letters, making sure that they've received everything. Before you have to go through all these procedures before you could kick them out. And by that time, you know, you're probably the landlord might be, you know, 6 months out of rent, right? But does that mean you don't have to pay for your mortgage? No, it doesn't, right? And especially during this pandemic, the government is, you know, favoring the tenant even more than the landlords, right? In the sense that they can apply through, you know, hardship and say, well, I can't pay rent, so I won't pay rent. But at the same time, the government is telling the landlord you can't kick them out because the tenant doesn't pay rent. So for us as an agency, a managing agent, we're stuck in a very high place because our vendor, our client, it's the vendor. Without the vendor, I'm not going to have the tenant. I don't need to find the tenant. So where do we stand as a property agent, and where do you stand as a property investor? So I strongly believe that the government needs to, you know, change the way that they think. But in saying that, I mean, I could be sitting here and a tenant might be saying to me, well, that's you know, that's just too harsh. I mean, you know, because in Asia, obviously, you know, there's no way in hell that you can outdo a landlord. The landlord always wins, right? So it's a matter of different countries have different system, different beliefs. But we do find it very challenging during the COVID days, right? It's only getting better now because, you know, obviously we're out of lockdown, right? Australia as a country as a whole, each state has been locked down the longest compared to other cities around the world, especially Melbourne, right? And it's just very difficult for us to operate in this market. I mean, it doesn't matter. You have the best tech in the world, but if the government says, well, the tenant doesn't need to pay rent. So on one hand, we're stressing about not collecting rent, right? And then we're saying to the landlord, the government say we can't kick them out. And obviously we have the other side, the landlord screaming at us, we're 6 months out of rent, right? So it's been a difficult time during COVID, you know, especially for my team in the Melbourne office, Australia office. Yeah.
Interesting. That's an interesting sort of insight, Terence. From my experience, I mean, there are different challenges that different residential properties are facing in countries. So, for example, SF Bay Area, right? It is exactly the same as Australia. You cannot kick your tenant out even if they are not paying. Somebody can essentially barge into your house and they can start living in your garage, and you can't do anything about it, right? And the biggest problem is that you don't even have enough judges to hear the case and come up with the decision and so on and so forth. So it's a completely different set of challenges for the properties in Bay Area.
Yeah.
While on the other hand, if we talk about the tenant engagement in India, for those private residential properties, there are committees where the tenants are presidents. They are part of the council. They try to create different kind of events. They try to organize different kind of functions and celebrations and things of that nature. So it's a very it gives a good human touch that, hey, there are people who think like us, not like some artificial intelligent model or like a robot. So there are people who have feelings, who can have some empathy with us, and they can think about different kind of ways for the tenant engagement, right? Technology will have different set of challenges in India because people are heavily relied on those councils or presidents and so on and so forth, on those committees and so on and so forth, right? In Singapore and in other sort of developed countries, you have a bunch of rules and regulations around confidentiality, right? How do you use all these computer vision or image recognition technologies while extracting all the data about the tenants and build models based on those people's private information, personal information? So there are a bunch of rules around PDPA or GDPR or something else, and you essentially have to understand all those rules and regulations very closely before you can do anything meaningful, right? And it takes a lot of expertise in understanding those policies, those regulations. It takes a lot of time, effort, money, and then obviously you will have to build the models once you understand all of that, the legal side of it. So the challenges are completely different in different countries. And I think that you have to have hybrid solutions that have best of human touch as well as technology. You can't rely on any one component. It has to be best of both the worlds, human touch as well as technology, to bring the best results, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like when we talk about human touch, and I just want to ask a little bit more about this topic. Is normally there is we see that there is also kind of a conflict when we talk about technology, then we talk about human touch. All right. So how do you think about to tackle the kind of a conflict? Because in terms of human touch, people want to have this kind of people relationship, but then when we talk about technology helping them to be efficient, but then sometimes technology is too automated. All right. So what do you see about these areas as well? Say for Pankaj.
No, I mean, see, it is difficult to make that fine balance, right? I mean, again, I'll go back to the past example that you have different set of challenges, and yes, money is available, but then you also need to think as a startup, how can I bring that right balance as quickly as possible? Use that money to have as much customer traction as possible and scale very quickly, right? Many startups get stuck into finding that right balance and they don't even go to the next stage, right? And then there are startups who are able to find that right balance. They are able to utilize the investment in the right way and then go to the next stage. And I think since this is still way early to figure out which startup or which scale up may have found that right balance, I think it is difficult to say. Probably we will have a clarity after 2-3 years what kind of startups are winning this game and what kind of startups just could not find that balance, could not scale fast and could not grow fast, right? So I think it will take a few more years before we figure out, hey, what was the right balance, right? And again, I don't think accelerators or investors like us or people who are not deep down into the sector can understand that at the moment. It is the startups who are deep down into it may have better clarity about it, and they will come with the verdict probably in a few years from now that, hey, that was the right balance, right? So that's what I think. Terence?
Well, I think it's very interesting. It's hard to find the perfect solution. It's not a one key fit all kind of solution in this current climate. It's like you said, Pankaj. It's geographically. Each of the sector is facing different challenges, right? The stakeholders are different, and obviously the governments around all these stakeholders, or the governments of these countries, are all very different, right? It's all down to the policies, right? The policy holders, right? And the way that the market has been operating in the past, in the past. For example, give you a perfect example of, I believe India relies heavily into portals, right? You list a property on portals and people go on it, right? And then in Hong Kong, portals are weak, right? There are portals out there, Isaac probably knows, and there's the REA, there's the 28 House, there's the Spacious, but then portals don't really make a huge impact in the market, right? So over in Australia, the portals dominate the market. They can charge whatever fees they want to charge, right? And people can't do anything about it. And I'm sure it's similar in the States as well. And also in the UK, you have your Rightmove, you have your Zoopla. They seem to be, right up there. So yeah, I mean, it's in this current market, it's hard to find a solution that fits into every market. It's always about the adaptation, right? How you could, have an idea, and then, if it works in one market, and how to change and evolve that fits into another market. I think that's always going to be a challenge, right? The localization part is the hardest part, I think, in this PropTech world.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. Localization is the key element of it, right? For example, Amazon could not win all the countries. There are local Amazons in almost all the countries, right? And I think it'll be exactly the same for the PropTech space as well. It won't be one solution. There has to be local solutions based on the policies, based on the regulations, based on the culture, based on psychology of the people, and bunch of other factors.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, totally agree. Like that's a very interesting insights and sharing. I want to ask the next question. It's about like tenants engagement, properties management, because we see like it's very different between both as well. Because properties management could be more on like how you manage the whole properties, like the billings, the kind of the security, so on and so forth, and a lot more. And tenants engagement is more on like to bridge the gap between the tenants and the owners and property, even like the property management as well. So what do you think are the difference between the key values of tenants engagement and properties management between Asian and other places? Terence, we invite you to share first.
from the engagement aspect, whether it's for sales or marketing, sales and management, I guess in Australia, you would go through the portals straight away, right? The portal is obviously, you select the suburb, the price point, the property type, and then, you check out the listings, and then you look at the inspection time, and then you go into inspect, because the inspection times are set, and how they can control that is because, it's rarely do you see general authority being signed between the agency and the landlord. Whereas in Hong Kong, hardly do you see any exclusive listings with any agencies. It's always a general authority, and that everybody can access. I mean, it's based on geographic. They're grouped by your demographics and the geographical area. Normally, if you have a bunch of agents that a row of shops, and then you probably have 4 or 5 agencies, they probably have access to all those. They have access to properties. They all have access to the same properties, right? Whether it's for sales or whether it's for property management, it's actually come down to who, as an owner, no, as a tenant or a buyer, it comes down to who you want to work with, right? Which one do you like, right? So I think in Asia it's a lot more old school. It's a lot more competitive. Whereas in Australia, I'm not saying Australia's not competitive, but if you can get the listings, and your property is good, you guarantee some results. I think one thing that never changes, for properties, not PropTech, but properties all around the world. It doesn't matter you're India, China, Singapore, Malaysia, Australia, USA. Location, right? If you've got a hot property, it's going to attract people, right? And what I always say is that for an agency like ourselves, it's very hard to get that customer loyalty unless every project that you have is the best project in town, right? People are not going to buy a flat just because, I'm buying from Terence because I like rayon. They're going to buy from rayon because they like the property, right? So it's the other way around. And I think it's very hard to change that. You can't change that, unless the agency becomes a developer, and the developer is, it's got all the best land in the world and the best project in the world, right? And unfortunately, I think that's the nature of the game, because, what we're doing here is a high ticket item. It's not a what we call a FMCG or so it's a little bit different. It's a bit challenging.
Yeah, I'll touch upon different aspects of the property management and tenant engagement, right? I truly believe that property management has always been, or this as a space has always been more innovative or more innovation friendly than tenant engagement space. And it is going to be even more innovation friendly going forward because of all the push from the governments on smart city projects, because of all the push from the government's policymakers and VCs on the ESG, right? And because of all the investments and policies that are going to force properties on being more creative, more environment friendly, on being more conscious about about the innovation. I truly believe that property management space is going to innovate, is going to transform really fast, way faster than the tenant engagement space. Because in tenant engagement space, the policymakers and the other people are not adding as much fuel, but there are more speed breakers in terms of privacy and confidentiality and things of that nature, right? And also the human element has slightly more impact on the tenant engagement space than on the property management space, right? And because of that human touch, the innovation in tenant engagement is going to be slightly slower than in property management. Obviously, I mean, both the spaces are going to innovate, because when one space is innovating, obviously the second space will have to innovate to keep the pace. But still, property management has to be a way faster in terms of innovation and adoption.
Well, there's a very good insight, I would say, to be honest. Like when you shared very clearly about like what do you think about another ways, like between the tenants engagement and property management. Yeah, I'm just curious, like when we go back to tenants engagement, I totally understand that, like about like the human behavior side. So for Pankaj, what do you observe the shift of the tenants' behaviors? Say, just now you talk about the human touch type for the past 10 years. Any insights you can share here?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things with the human, right? As an investor, and I'll talk from investor's perspective. As an investor, when you hear startup pitches that, hey, we are going to change human behavior, it seems quite difficult, quite complicated, right? Because changing behavior of hundreds of millions of people or a billion people, it is very difficult. It is very complex, right? You have to do a lot of education for that. You have to present things differently. You have to narrate your story differently. And also, I mean, you can't change human behavior based on just one story. You'll have to change behavior of Indonesian through a different story. You will have to change behavior of Indians through a different story, Singaporeans through a different story, Hong Kong people from a different story. So you have to create so many different stories and so many different narratives to change the behavior of these people, right? So since tenant engagement is highly focused on human behavior, that's another sort of speed breaker and changing and innovating that space faster as you expect, right? So I mean, if I look at the last 1 decade, I don't see so much innovation in the tenant engagement space. The only sort of speed that we were able to gain, it was because of the pandemic, and that was forced. Right? You didn't have any choice. People didn't have any choice. They had to change, right? They had to transform. But again, going back to the property management space, obviously the human behavior was not such a big impact, and it is even happening faster now because of all these smart city and ESG initiatives. And in some cases, you as a property owner may not even care about ESG, but you will have to at least do the marketing and PR, because you want to look good in front of press. You want to look good in front of the public, in front of policy makers. And that's why so many companies are talking about ESG irrespective of what they feel within their heart. so it is different sort of different circumstances for both tenant engagement and property management. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So what about Terence? What do you think? What do you observe?
Well, I think it's not a, first and foremost, I don't think it's an area that we could tackle immediately because there's so many stakeholders involved. Obviously, everyone's pushing out the IoT in buildings, and owners of the building or building corporation can monitor the usage of the buildings a lot better. But in terms of tenant engagement, it's pretty hard. I mean, you can engage the usage of, whether your facilities are being used in a building, and from a developer point of view, whether you're going to be, there's a need to design and implement all these amenities into the building. I think a lot of the buildings that's being built, a lot of the facilities aren't being used, and there's no way to really. I mean, most developers is once the building is done, it's set and forget. But yes, with IoT, they can at least measure whether the facility is being booked, right, and that would drive engagement with. I would say residents of the building, be tenant, being owner, right? And with certain platform that developers can implement in certain building management, obviously you can create marketplace and you can build an ecosystem in a building management app, and that would drive tenant engagement, right? And and I've seen that being implemented in Australia in recent times, right? When they organise barbecues, parties, or there's some garage sale, they post it online. It's like an eBay, it's like a Facebook. I think these sort of things helps, and I think going back to tenant engagement, this is what we need, and certainly in Australia is being done. And especially in all the new estate, as well as all the high rises that were recently built in the last probably 4 to 5 years. Whereas in Hong Kong, maybe that's still a little bit early, but certainly, from a tech city point of view, that's going to be something to look forward to in many years to come.
Well, I think that's a very interesting insight as well, because just share a little bit based on our observation, we see that even now, a lot of people say they start to call for taxi in apps and then buy stuff in apps. A lot of this are shopping, logistics ordering, so this kind of things really is happening in apps, or it's happening in online marketplace or online platform. So when we talk about this kind of new technologies that recently happenings and a lot of this kind of changes during the pandemic period, what do you think? Do you agree that this kind of technology is another very upcoming, is going to be a huge trend in terms of driving the whole tenancy engagement for their whole shifting, or for their whole transformation in this area? What do you think in this site, say for Terence?
I think it's driving transformation. I think you're right. I mean, having technology could, number one, reduces the resources spent on the actual labor running the management of the building. A lot of things can be done autonomously, which is traditionally very hard to do in older buildings, especially in Hong Kong, where they still have a security guard sitting outside and monitoring the building 24/7. And it's not very effective. A lot of these security guards, especially late at night, they fall asleep, or they really don't know what's going on. They're just there because it's a job, right? But I think technology can change that, right? I mean, if you have enough security cameras, you have enough, video footage, even the thieves and whatever they want to do, it's you're going to be caught in cameras, right? I mean, there's hardly any blind spots these days, with the new buildings. So, and with that, people feel safer, right? And if this app or platform can allow people to do various things, such as not just book a taxi, but pay your gas bill, pay your rates, pay your body corporate fees, right? and then you add a marketplace in there to try to engage, to get the whole, not just to drive the engagement among residents of the buildings. That's one way to build that ecosystem, right? And if successful landlords can implement that, if you have enough properties in the area, that ecosystem becomes valuable data. And what you can do with that data, sky's the limit. Be it sell them another property, be it sell some auxiliary services. You've got some new gadget you want to launch. And I think that's what most landlords or developers are trying to capture these days. And certainly groups like Hong Kong Land, Swire, Hysan Place, Cheung of the world. It's a competitive landscape, but how do you engage these people so that they become your repeat purchasers, right? And I think that's through the use of technology. They're already doing that. Loyalty clubs, reward point system. How do we one up from there? I think that's what everybody's aiming for.
Yeah. So
I
think
cool. That's amazing.
This is definitely the right time to not only build these kind of solutions, but also ensure it is the right time to ensure that the adoption is happening faster, right? And again, I'm talking about both tenant engagement and property management spaces. This is the absolute right time. The only concerns that I see, with the tenant engagement is that you don't have so many revenue models as you have for the commercial property management space. With the commercial property management space, you may have subscription models, you may have the revenue sharing model, you have a bunch of MarTech solutions that you can offer to the people in the properties, right? You can automate a bunch of things, and you can reduce requirement of manual solutions, and you can save a lot of money for the properties, and because of that, you may be able to have the right kind of revenue model. But when it comes to the tenant engagement solution, the revenue model could be a big challenge, because obviously the revenue sharing models are not so prominent, right? Probably creating a marketplace, selling different kind of services, selling different kind of products could be a way. But yeah, you can't have huge subscription fee, or you can't take commissions from different kind of bookings and so on and so forth, right? So I think the revenue model could be one challenge that tenant engagement platforms will have to think about. And I would actually like to turn the tables here, and I would like to ask this question to Isaac as well, because Isaac is expert within the space, because you have been selling to different kind of properties, and you have been going to them with tenant engagement platform. What kind of challenges are you seeing in terms of adoption, in terms of starting pilot? What kind of concerns that you hear from your targeted customers?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting insights, because I wouldn't claim myself as expert, but I would say based on our observations, when we actually talk to different kind of co-working spaces, the owners, and when we were approached by one of the property managements, there is one property management company that actually have many different kind of solutions, from IoT, from marketplace, from even engineering management. There are a lot of different solutions, and they are trying to see that their business development managers look for us and say, hey, we want to put more our marketplaces like products that we can actually sell off to our residents, managed by our property management company. All right. And they're trying to, like what Terence said, is on the ecosystem building. Okay. And I would say that this is something that definitely they are looking for. Okay. And I think in terms of the challenges, mostly of them, they are considering about the cost, I would say, the cost of the whole solution. Okay, like how much cost, what's the subscription fees, and there's another ways that we need to consider. And secondly is like depends on many different kind of property management, because some like what I said just now, they already have different kind of ecosystem around, so it's easier for them to talk about this solution. But for some of them that they are merely on property management, then they might need to have some click or some creative ideas to tell them, hey, actually you can have this kind of different streams of revenues to grow in these segments or to grow in these areas, that it could be in another very interesting way. And in terms of co-working spaces, like we deal with them, it's very interesting also to say that like they are also doing almost the same thing in their own co-working spaces. When we talk about like WeWork, they actually have different kind of tenants engagement, like yoga classes, like different kind of these things. So I would say for this kind of more established, they want to engage their community for more recurring income, then definitely they would easy to move in. So I would say it's a balance while there's a transformation in this area. So yeah, that's what we observe.
That's interesting.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, I think like we still have around like 7 minutes before the end of this session. So maybe we can open up for the audience to ask one question if there's any. So let's see if any questions from the audience.
Roy, Srushti, Sandy, Jesse, please feel free.
Yes, thank you for rich sharing. And I got one very good insights about you guys talking about localization. It's very critical for tenant and engagement. Actually, I've had during the pandemic, I experienced similar things. The property owners start to create a lot of private groups to communicate each other more closely. For example, they find somewhere that there is a lot of garbage in around the corner, and they want someone to ask the management company who will clean up such things. So I find that each building has different kind of message that the management company need to communicate with the tenant very more closely. So localization, I really agree that is very important for different, I would say different buildings. Even it's not localization based on different area or location. Even in different buildings. So yeah, this is one insights I can get from you guys. And I'm not sure, can you guys tell me more about this idea? So how localization we can improve, and that help us to improve on the tenant engagement.
So in terms of localization, I don't think localization or customization from one building to another or from one locality to another is possible, because as a startup, you may do those kind of localizations, but then it will not be very scalable, right? However, if you want to have a fine balance between localization and scalability, probably we need to think about localization for countries. That, hey, let's say when I'm going from Hong Kong to Malaysia, or Hong Kong to Thailand, or Hong Kong to Singapore, these are the 4 or 5 things that I need to localize for Hong Kong, for Singapore especially, for Thailand especially, and so on and so forth, right? Because even too much localization may kill the overall growth story of the startup. So it has to be very finely balanced. Yeah, that's my view on localization.
I've got a crazy idea. When we're talking about localization, like Pankaj saying, it's very hard because different developers have different ecosystem, and no one wants to share their ecosystem because how landlords are, right? If I've got something good I want to share with the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So Roy, I mean, it's impossible to do that. It's hard to get the developers to shake hands and say, oh, let's do this. However, we're coming up to Web 3.0, right? Imagine the the building management system has a incorporation of a metaverse later on, and somehow these metaverses can join and share. I don't know whether that even just skips the whole localization kind of thing, because everyone's going to meet virtually. Now you think about it. I mean, this sounds a little bit crazy, but you think about Australia as a Australia as a country that has attracted so many students going there to study from around the world. This is especially apparent during pandemic when traveling is hard. And travels is hard, but if we could create some sort of communication between the two parties, they get into a metaverse. There's a VR, in the reception area or in the common area, and they jump on and they can speak to their parents. Where they're in Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, India, anywhere, just to meet up and kind of see each other face to face. I mean, that's better than localization, right? That would, I mean, that sort of tenant engagement, no doubt, it jumps out of the current building. It means like basically all the buildings can then all join together geographically. It doesn't matter where you are, and as long as they can agree on, how all these different metaverses can communicate with one another, that solved that problem between the ecosystem among buildings. But if everyone's talking crazy, I think this is definitely not so far from the truth. Why did Tencent acquire a Japanese anime studio a couple of weeks ago for that crazy amount of dollars? It's because the Japanese have talked about metaverse for a long time. I mean, it's just like Matrix, and we all know Matrix is having a comeback, and there's a lot of Japanese anime to talk about metaverses. So I think it's happening. We all understand. No one understood what internet was 25 years ago when we're still on the 33.6 or 58-bit modem. But now we 20 years later, 5G is part of life. Where would you go without 5G? And being someone that was born in the 80s and living the current, in a current mixed-up world, I think, metaverses are definitely here to, it's going to be a force to be reckoned with, but it comes down to, the social and the governance part of these metaverses. Obviously you can be someone that you're not in these worlds, and how you're being governed. What are the regulation, or what are the rules? Can you steal? Can you rape? Can you commit crime? I mean, those are the things that Mark Zuckerberg never talked about, right? But certainly, we all know it happens, right? And from a social responsibility point of view, I'm sure that they just never get reported. People playing a 10-cent game and then they lost a sword that they spend, hours or a lot of money because they got stolen, got hacked, and then ended up a guy committing suicide. There's something that people don't really talk about on an everyday basis. So I still think there's going to be a lot of challenges. But I do have crazy ideas, and let's see how it plays out in the next 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I agree that. I believe that it's coming soon. So with the metaverse, so I'm sure that we'll meet in the metaverse way for meeting like now. So yeah.
Yeah. I like Terence's crazy idea, and that is
I like it. Me too. Yeah.
possibility in a few years, right?
Yeah,
I
I
say
think so.
time to build it, man. You got to build it for me. I've got
Okay.
an idea now.
Great
Yeah,
one,
we
great
got
one.
this.
Good idea.
Right,
Gotta
right,
prepare
right.
for that.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. So like I think it's like yeah, it's a very fruitful panel discussion today. Like we get a lot of insights. We touch a lot about like localizations, all right, and then it's about human touch, about the portal, like say in Asia and in Australia, it works very differently. All right. And then we talk about like when in terms of tenants engagement and also in the property management, we need to consider different, there are a lot of very complex relationships between compliances, between the government, between the regulations. So there are many different kind of stakeholders that we need to kind of involve in and to explore. And finally, I think the last one, very crazy, yet it's an idea that is happening, is about metaverse. It's about like, that could be the future that actually make the gap of the relationship of people to get closer. All right. So yeah, I mean, like it's a very fruitful discussion today, and thank you so much, everyone. So let me like pass back to Pankaj to see if Pankaj has any more things to wrap up before the end of
No,
the panel discussion.
I love the discussion. I love the insights from Terence and Isaac. You did a fantastic job as a moderator. Really appreciate your time. And everybody in the audience, Roy, Shrishti, Sandy, Jesse, and Madhu, thanks a lot for joining. This recording will be available on YouTube on EthAum's channel for the future viewing. And I hope we can, connect more in the future. We can do more of these kind of panels and fireside chat and have more interactive discussions in the future. Again, thanks a lot, Terence. Really, really appreciate your time and your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope the idea wasn't too crazy.
No, it is very much realistic.
Because I guess I want to add is that I suppose being in sales and marketing and being property management for so long, certainly we see a lot of limitations and challenges, especially I'm living between Hong Kong and Australia, and I'm always trying to find ways to turn a mundane or old school industry into something that, number one, as a business owner, I want my property managers to be able to manage more properties. That's first and foremost, to control costs. But before you do that, how do you improve that communication between on the problems? How do you reduce problems between the landlords and the tenants? Quite frankly, I haven't found the perfect solution. So yeah, looking forward to some new ideas.
Appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody.